And welcome back, everyone. I just want to take a quick moment at the beginning of the podcast to talk about the elephant in the room. Most of the people in the United States right now are home. I live in New York City, so I'm quarantined. And a lot of people are going through some hard times. So I know people are wishing that, something would just come and wash, their fears and everything away. That's a good thing I'm here, because I'm bringing with me a Greycast. Thank you, everyone. This is Super Common World coming at you with, I think, the 16th episode of the podcast. Today is February. No, it's not February. March 22nd. The reason I'm putting the date in today's episode is because a lot of things I'm going to talk about today have to do with specific dates. Now, I'm not going to talk about the coronavirus because I don't want to talk about some negative stuff. I want to talk to you about professional wrestling. More specifically, WWE and AEW. So, I think all around the world right now, most sports or active sports have been they just stopped working. I know in the United States, basketball and the XFL, they just completely stopped. WWE is in a unique situation, and AEW, or it's professional wrestling, because they're kind of the only sport, quote unquote, that is still going, that they're actively going week by week. And I guess I want to talk about the different ways they're going, because this could be a golden age for them, in the sense that they're the only, again, quote unquote, sport that people can watch, that's still going live, that people can tune in every week, and they're gonna be presented with something new. But I think one is completely dropping the ball, and one is blowing it out of the water. So I'll talk about AEW quickly because they've only had one show since all this started. They were in an empty arena because all these things are in empty arenas now, and they started out in a kind of somber, lights out, just one person talking in the ring, and they were talking about the coronavirus and what they're gonna do, and you kind of thought maybe they're just gonna be like, so this is the end for now, and then I don't know, show old footage or something, but they didn't. They kind of worked it in a positive into a we can do it speech, and it was amazing. And then they started with the show. Now, what they did, which I loved, was they had live wrestling. They continued with the stories in an empty arena, but it wasn't empty because they sprinkled 10 wrestlers along the ringside, and they kind of grouped them into heels and faces, and it was actually pretty fun. I really enjoyed it because you have some of them who are in storylines with people in the ring, so they're booing certain people. The heels are gambling and betting on who's gonna win matches. It was a really amazing show. They had some surprise reveals. The show blew me out of the water for AEW. WWE, on the other hand, they're now I know it's hard because you never know who within the company is gonna get it. You can't have a lot of people showing up. However, I think WWE circumnavigates that because they own the property that they're on. They have the Performance Center, which is basically almost like a storage hangar that they own. So I think they're allowed to have these events still going on there, where AEW has to find places that'll allow them. And so far, WWE has had one of each of their shows. I think one Raw, one SmackDown, and two SmackDowns, one Raw, and NXT. And each one, they're not doing anything. They have this monumental opportunity. And I know it's weird, they can captivate on the coronavirus, but they can. Business-wise, they can captivate it by being the only thing that people could watch if you want sports. And they're just showing old footage every episode. I mean, Monday Night Raw I turned on because I was so curious, and I don't watch Raw a lot because it's so boring. I mostly watch AEW and SmackDown. So I turned into Monday. I'm me, a casual viewer, let's go, let's see how they're gonna do it. And they just showed the Royal Rumble, which if you didn't watch the Royal Rumble, I guess that's good. But I did watch the Royal Rumble, so I watched for 10 minutes. Is this gonna go somewhere, or are they just gonna show the full match in its entirety? And they did just that. So I turned it off. I didn't even watch the rest of the show. And I know some things happened, but I think I heard that there was less than 10 minutes of active wrestling on a 3-hour show, and it's just, come on, guys, what are you doing? And then Wednesday night NXT, like I said, I watched AEW and they go head to head, so I'd flip back and forth, and then I stopped because NXT was just showing old footage. It was, I think, 2 hours, and the whole show was just old footage centered around these two guys and their like feud for the past 2 years. And it's just, how are you doing this? How are you getting that lazy? I know it's the old problem with the virus, and I know you can't bring in too many people, but you don't have to bring in too many people. That's the good thing about wrestling. You can just bring in like 10 guys, and you just have those 10 guys on that show and girls, you know. So yeah, and it's just, come on, man. But the reason so the reason why this is also a crazy time for wrestling is that this week, well, not this week, next week, was going to be WrestleMania, which, if you know wrestling, that's the biggest wrestling event of the year. Usually you have WrestleMania, and then throughout the week, scattered like a bunch of indie promotions, like hundreds of indie promotions. You also have NXT's Takeover. You have the Hall of Fame, and so this week it's kind of been canceled, which is crazy because WWE is losing out on so much money with this. Well, I mean, the whole wrestling world is losing out on money. Like I said, all the indie promotions, they had to stop. So NXT Takeover was postponed. The Hall of Fame was postponed. I think they said the Hall of Fame might be around SummerSlam time, if there is even a SummerSlam, because we don't know how long this epidemic is going to go. So right now, WWE said this week, and I'm happy I made the podcast. I was originally going to record it yesterday, but luckily I waited, and then big news dropped. WWE has announced that they are going to start taping episodes of Raw and SmackDown for the next few weeks. So what I mean by that is they're going to go in maybe 1 or 2 days for each show and just film multiple episodes of that show and then air them during that week when it's normally supposed to come out, which is good because even though they own their property, it could all end like that because all it takes is one person to come in sick with the virus and then it's all shut down. They can't do it anymore, which is dangerous for WWE because, like I said, they're a weekly show. So I think it's brilliant that they're going to go in and film like 4 episodes, which basically like the next month worth of Raw, SmackDown, NXT. Brilliant idea. So happy they're doing that because, yeah, everything's up in the air with everything. So I'm glad that they're doing that at least. I hope they do film actual shows and it's not like just video clips of old footage. I hope it's actual like shows, like episodes of SmackDown, Raw, and NXT. But the big thing is, they announced WrestleMania, for the first time ever, will be 2 nights. Because WrestleMania has a huge problem. Most sports are trying to decrease the length of their games, where wrestling is like, no, we have to make it longer. So WrestleMania has become tedious and exhausting because it's like 7 hours. It's like a 3-hour pre-show and then it's like a 5 or 6 hour show. It starts at like 4 in the afternoon and could go to like 12:30. I think last WrestleMania went to like 12:30 at night. It was crazy long. I was watching it with a friend and at like 12 o'clock at night my friend's like, can I go? I have work tomorrow. And I'm like, yeah, this is like not even over yet. It's not even the last match. I'm curious to see if they would have made it 2 nights originally, or it's just the virus made them do it. But I'm happy they're doing that because it's needed. They have, I don't know how many matches they have right now planned, but I know that it's definitely going to be maybe like 15 matches. I think last year was about 14 matches. And I don't think that's even including the stuff on the pre-show. So I am glad that they're retconning that. And they announced that this upcoming weekend, or week, sometime, I'm not sure the exact date, they are going to film WrestleMania. Like, they're going to tape it. So WrestleMania is going to be filmed this week and then released to the public, I think, 2 weeks from now. Like, the first weekend of April. And it's, I don't know how they're going to, I wonder how it's going to do rating-wise on the network. Because for 2 weeks, the results of WrestleMania are going to be online. I don't even know. I'm going to watch WrestleMania. I was always planning to. But I don't know if I could stay away from that kind of temptation and not look up who wins. Because I'm kind of curious. It's WrestleMania. These big storylines are ending. I want to know who wins. And it's just, I'm going to have to like fight it every day to not read the spoilers. I think WrestleMania usually makes like $78 million for them, if I remember the numbers correctly. And I'm not sure because there's a whole insurance thing. Most sports and like just most things are closing down and just stopping, but specifically sports. So WrestleMania, I think the whole thing with it was insurance, where when it comes to sporting insurance, if an event like WrestleMania or a game, like just if they just stop it, they don't get any money. But if the state orders them to stop, and all this is for like health reasons, if the state orders them not to do it, then they recoup a large majority of the money they were going to lose through insurance. And I don't remember if, well, I guess it's still going, WrestleMania, so I don't know how that plays into all of it. Because they're definitely losing money. I mean, let alone just the ticket sales. They usually sell like 80 plus thousand tickets. So if they're losing that, they're losing Hall of Fame, the tickets, NXT. Yeah, it's crazy how much money's around the table with everything. How much money is being lost. But they're going on with the show. I don't know if it's good. I think it's a good idea. There's a lot of back and forth on if they should have it. Because it is WrestleMania and people want it to be a big event. But where do you put it? People are thinking, oh, what about, in the summer? But you have SummerSlam. You can't have WrestleMania and SummerSlam like a month apart. It's just weird. And then the hype for each one, or the second one, whichever comes second, isn't really there. And they don't want that. You could put it in the fall, maybe. But I don't know. WrestleMania isn't really a fall thing. It's a spring thing. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's a good thing. I think you have WrestleMania now. I know Saudi Arabia wanted it. I think they said Saudi Arabia offered like $70 million for it, which is such crazy amount of money. And I'm happy they didn't take that, because I think that'd be such bad PR if they went to Saudi Arabia. I mean, they have bad PR for going to Saudi Arabia and doing what they're doing anyways, but to bring WrestleMania, the biggest event, to Saudi Arabia, I think there'd be a huge backlash. Huge backlash. And it's not like Saudi Arabia doesn't have the coronavirus there too. There's been cases. I don't even know where to go from here, man. It's just crazy, everything happening. There's going to be documentaries. Not just in the wrestling world, but in the regular world. Documentaries of what's happening right now. But specifically wrestling, I'd be very curious to see the behind the scenes of what's happening right now. With everything. Indies, AEW, NXT, Impact, ROH, New Japan. Everything is just being canceled. All these major events. I don't know. But as of right now, I think AEW is winning the weekly television war, because they're actually putting on good content. I think this week, usually AEW and NXT, which go head to head, the ratings are about like 800,000 for AEW and then like 700,000 for NXT. And this week, AEW had around 900 plus thousand, and NXT was like struggling at 500,000. So I hope WWE sees that and swerves and it's like, okay, now we have to put on good content. And with the tapings that they're doing for the next couple of months or weeks, I hope they bring their A game, because I love wrestling. And yeah, that's really it. Thanks for watching this. I hope everyone stays safe. Be careful out there. Wash your hands, you filthy animals. And we are